In the last session, we just saw the overview of the build management and what is the purpose of a build tool, and then we saw the architecture and overview of the Maven standards. So when I was talking about the Maven architecture, I said there's two things important. One is a Pom Dot Xml, which is a configuration file, and there is another directory structure we have to follow. So how does Maven identify a particular project is very important, because it is not particularly a project. It could be any libraries or a plugin which Maven is trying to use to perform a task. So for all these things, it uses a unique ID using which it will be identifying what project it is and what particular plugin it is. So in that way, so Maven uses a combination of a string called GAV. Okay, so this pretty much acts like a coordinates through which you can identify a particular project in Maven. So when I say coordinates, just like how you have coordinates on your graph sheets, or you have coordinates on your Excel, or in a map, if you take, you have the coordinates on longitude, latitude, and degree, right? So just exactly like that, Maven uses a coordinate called GAV, using which it will be uniquely identifying a project or a plugin. So what is that GAV? So the GAV is nothing but a combination of three strings or three values. So where the G represents a name or a string which is used to identify the group, or generally we call it as a group ID, and A represents artifact ID, and V represents the version of a project which you are going to release. So group ID is nothing but generally a string through which you will be identifying the organization on which you are working, or within an organization, if it is a specific business group based on which you are trying to do this project. So literally it will let you know a ID or a string using which you will be identifying a group for which you are doing the project. And artifact ID represents the name of the project. So what is the project that you're trying to work? You will have a name for that project, right? So that is what you will use it as a artifact ID to identify. And finally, when you say the version, so for any software, when you're trying to do a release, we always identify the releases using a combination of three numbers. And that three numbers together is what we call it as a version or a release. So now when you take a version, the three numbers, whatever that you see, will be identified as the first number of that string of the release or version is represented as the major release, and then minor release, and the last one will be the patch number or the maintenance which you are using it. So in case if you try to see any product, right, you will always get a release or the version information at the information page where you have. So in that you will always see a three numbers followed by digits, or it will have two digits. So that means the first number is the major release, second number is the minor release, and then you will have the maintenance release number. So a combination of these three things is what we call as a version to identify what is the release of the project. So now when you say the GAV, it will use a combination of all these three followed by semicolon. Okay, so now if you take the GAV syntax, it will be something like the group ID colon, the artifact ID colon, and the version. So with the combination of all these three things, we will be able to uniquely identify any project or a plugin in Maven. Okay, so the Pom Dot Xml, whatever that we will be creating, will be basically containing these information, using which the Maven will be able to identify what project it is. And not only that, when we have to invoke a goal internally, that will also call a plugin based on this GAV only. Okay, so remember, we will talk about this little deeper when we go through the pom.xml. But for now, GAV is a unique identification string or a method which the Maven uses to identify every project or a plugin. So now let's get started with setting up Maven. Now, to install Maven, what we are going to do is, if you go to the Maven site, unlike others, Maven is not an installer. So Maven comes as a distribution. So when you say distribution, it is basically will be coming as an archive file which you can download and extract. That is the only thing you have to do. So now, based on the operating system that you have, if you come down, you can see there are two formats of the file. One is the binary format, the other one is the complete source. That is, if we want, I can download the source of the Maven, which will be again a Java file, and I can modify it so that I can get my own feature in Maven. If you want, we can do that. Or simply, for us to execute, we need just a binary format. So you can download any of these depending on what is the platform on which you're working. Suppose if you're trying to work on Windows, then download or extract the zip file to a directory in your Windows. Or if it is a Linux based machine, regardless of whatever it is, you just download this file and untar it to a directory. So that is the only thing that you have to do. Okay, so once you extract it to a particular directory, then in order to run Maven, we need Java, because Maven is created on Java, so it runs on Java only. So you need to have Java installed in your laptop or on your machine. So when you install Java, you will be getting a environment variable called java_home, which points to the directory where you have the Java installed in this machine. Okay, so now I'm opening a Windows command prompt. Again, if needed, I can use the git bash command prompt also. It will be working. There is no difference. Okay, so now I'm using the Windows command prompt because this is a Windows machine. So now here, what is that I have to do is I have to find out if Java is installed. So to verify that, I will say Java -version. And sorry, it is -version. Now, when you have Java, make sure you have Java 1.7 or later. That is Java 1.7 or 1.8 on your machine. So anything older than this, Maven will not use it properly. So make sure you have minimum Java 1.7 any build. So this is one of the version of Java. So here if you see this, the version number is 1, which is the major release, 7 is the minor, and 0 is the patch number, and _79 is the build number what they have used. But if not, this is the major, minor, and the patch number. Okay, so Java is installed, and correspondingly you will be having the environment variable called Java home, on which you will be having the directory here. Okay, so for those who don't understand what is the environment variable, again, if you have gone through the fundamentals of Linux, I would have explained there, where an environment variable is a place where we will be storing a particular value and reuse. Since it is a Windows machine, I am trying to retrieve the value of an environment variable this way. Okay, so now once Java is installed and you have Java environment variable set properly, the next thing what we have to do is we have to set an environment variable called M2 home. So if it is a Linux machine on which you are trying to set the M2 home, then M2 home will be pointing to the directory where you have extracted the zip file or the tar file. Okay, so you would have extracted it after downloading, right? So that is the directory where you have to specify where exactly it has been extracted. So in my case, I've already set the M2 home variable, and you can see I have put the contents of the zip file into this directory. So you can see whenever you extract the contents of that zip file or tar file, this is what you will get. So you will get a bin folder and a lib folder. And inside the bin, if you go, you will see a Maven executable, and this is what we will be using. Okay, so make sure you set the environment variable called M2 home. And in case if you do not know how to create an environment variable on your My Computer or PC, click on My Properties, and in that go to Advanced System Settings, and in this click on Environment Variables. Okay, so in the environment variables, if you see, you will be having a lot of variables. Okay, and in this what you do is create a new variable, and here you have to say M2 home and the value of the directory where it has extracted. So that I've already done here. Okay, so like this, you have to set all the environment variables in this place. Okay, remember, right click properties on the My Computer, then go to advanced. In the advanced environment variable, and in this on the top box you have to create new variable and add the values. Okay, so
Adam,
yes,
when I'm giving the command java underscore home, echo java underscore home command in command prompt, the same command is getting repeated.
you have to say percentage java home percentage.
Yeah, I did the same thing.
That means java home is not set, so java is not installed, so you need to
No, it's
install.
installed. I already checked the version also, it's 1.8.0.
Okay, then set the Java home environment variable to the directory where you have installed Java. Search in your machine where Java
Yeah,
is
I
installed.
also tried that, but that is not working.
You have to set it, it's a Windows machine, right?
Yeah,
You set it the way that I showed. Right click properties, environment
yeah,
variable.
I did the same thing, but it's
Close
not
the
getting it.
close the command prompt and open it again.
Okay, fine.
Okay, so you should be getting that. So now M2 home is an environment variable which you will be pointing to the directory where we have extracted the Maven content. Okay, so that is the content where you have all these folders. This is where you should be pointing the M2 home. So as it says, the home for Maven. And along with it, you will also get an environment variable called M2. Okay, so you need to set this variable called M2 to the bin directory inside this. So inside your Maven home, you will have a bin folder, right? This is the content of M2. So M2 home should be pointing until here, and M2 should be pointing inside the bin folder. So this is the path that you will give for your M2 environment variable. Okay, remember M2 is the bin folder under M2 home, and M2 home is where you have extracted the contents. And once you have set, you don't have to worry about this. The next one is the path variable. So what do you mean by path? So in Linux or Windows, in any operating system, what happens is if you run some command, how does it know that this is the command and execute? The same thing if I write something junk here, it says it is not a recognized command. So how exactly it recognizes? It is because we have an environment variable called path, which the system gives us. And if you look at it, the path environment variable will have a list of directories where if you run a command or a executable, it will be searched against each of the directory that is available in this path environment variable. And if it is found anywhere, then it will be running that executable from the directory where it is found. For example, in my case, if you say when I said Java hyphen version, the Java hyphen version when I execute, this Java is available inside this directory that is given here. So if you see here, so now when it is searching, when it is searches one by one, it will come to this folder and it will say that, okay, the Java is available under the bin folder of this directory. So that is why it will pick. Suppose it is not found in any of the directories given here, then it will give it as a message that it is not found. So in the same way, now when we want to run Maven, the operating system should be able to identify the Maven, right? So in the path variable, we have to add the directory where we have installed or downloaded Maven, that is the M2 home value. Okay, so the M2 value that we have where the MVN executable is found until the bin folder. So that you add to the path variable. So simply what you can do is create a new variable called path, and in that if you give this on Windows, what it will do, it will append the existing path value. To that it will add the M2 variable, that is the bin folder of the M2 home. So if you just put this on a command prompt, or if you create a new path variable and give this on the Windows on the top box when you're creating environment variable, it will try to add the path and it will try to add the M2 value to this, so that now when you try to execute anything or call Maven, it will be identifying Maven. Okay, so make sure that we have set these environment variables. And once everything is done, you open a new command prompt. That is because when you open a command prompt, it will read the environment variables, whatever is set, and it will try to put it up on this environment. That is why anything new that you are creating, it will not be appearing on the existing command prompt. So if you open a new command prompt, once again, it will load all the environment variables, and that is when you will be getting the new environment variables, whatever you are setting. Okay, so once you have all the configuration done, that is the environment variables, if you do Maven version, you should be able to get the details. So that means now Maven is set up properly and Java is there. So everything is fine for our use case on Maven. Okay, so once you have said this much, what is the next thing that we have to do? Now we need to start working, right? Now, since if you are going to create a project in Maven, we have to follow a standard diary structure, that is the standard directory structure, and we also have to create a Pom Dot Xml. Based on that, we will be passing some goals to the Maven project. Now, instead of creating everything from the scratch, Maven gives us a template using which you can try to set up your project files or use to create the project using that template. Okay, so what will happen when you use the template? It will create a project with the directory structure and the default pom.xml, whatever is needed, everything will be created. So that now for the first, when we want to practice the Maven lifecycle, let's try to use the same and modify and try to work. As and when needed, we will be modifying the pom.xml and then do some test. So for now, since we don't have to worry about having a workspace to do the testing or to work on the Maven lifecycle, we will use the template what Maven gives us. Okay, so what I'm going to do is Okay, so I am inside a folder called Maven in the C drive. Why is this? Once again, I'm going to store all the files with respect to my Maven project inside this so that it will be easy for me to access. Okay, so now from this directory, I will run a command called maven archetype :generate, where the archetype generate is the goal name that you're passing, based on which Maven will create a template of a project. So now if you look, to perform this action, it is trying to use some plugin where that plugin is in the format of GAV, that is the group ID and then the version and then the artifact ID. Okay, so like that, using a particular GAV, it will be trying to create a template or a sample project for us when you run the Maven archetype generate. So let it run for a couple of minutes where it will gather the information and then proceed with the creating of the project. Hmm. Sometimes it gets stuck, so you have to hit on its head. So what is it now doing? Now the archetype generate tries to give us a lot of template options which we can choose to create a Maven project of a specific type. Okay, so now if you give a number here, based on that, whatever corresponding the template is there, it will use it to create the Maven project. Okay, so now since we are not worried about all those things, so let's go ahead with creating a standard template of the project. As any point of time, if you want, we can modify it and put more details into it. So let's go with this default Maven project type. So that is of the value 955, since we have each number and corresponding to it the type of project that you want to have. So I'm just going to press enter, and once it is entered, then it will ask us to choose what is the version of this project that you want to use in terms of the template. So once again, it doesn't matter for us. So if I press enter, it will take the default one. And now for the project that we are trying to create, it is asking the GAV details. So in the GAV, the very first detail that it is asking is the group ID of your project. So now the group ID, I'll say that's my SEM Learning Center. And now what is the artifact ID that you're going to work, or what is the name of the project? So let me say demo. And finally, what is the version that you're going to use to identify this? Now, since we are going to do some testing and work and try to understand the workflow, there is not to be used for a release purpose. So instead of giving the version name, what I'll do is I'll go ahead and use the default one that it is showed as 1.0 snapshot. So anytime if you press enter, it will take the default snapshot as the version. So this will be the name of the version. Why we are giving this, we will see it later. Okay, and then there is something called as package, which is nothing but the deliverable. So what is the name of the deliverable that you should be creating by doing a build of this project using Maven? So if you press enter, it will take the default one. And finally, it is confirming with us whether this is what you need. So it is trying to create a project with the GID, that it is, sorry, the GAV, where the group ID is this value, the artifact ID is demo, and the version is this. So if you say S, it would have completed. Okay. So now if you go to the same folder, now you can see that there would have been a folder created called demo, which is nothing but what? The name of the artifact or the name of the project. So inside that, if you go, you can see there is a src folder and there is a corresponding pom.xml. So if you remember in the yesterday's session that I said every project should begin with the standard directory structure called src, and then you will also have the configuration file called pom.xml in the same directory, that is the top level directory. And further, if you go inside src, you will see main folder and test folder, where main is going to contain all the files which is actually going to be used for creating the project, and test is going to contain all the test related files which we will be testing against each file that you have here. Okay, so in that way, further if you go to the main, you can see there is a Java folder, and inside which we will be putting all the project related Java files. In the same way, if you go to src test, this will also have a Java folder, but it will contain all the unit test files related to the files under what? Maven, the src and the main folder. Okay, so what exactly now it contains? So now when you're creating a project with the archetype generate goal, then if you see inside the Java folder, you will be having a file called app.java, because when it is trying to create a template, it will also give us a dummy file along with it. And now in the production, what you will be doing is you will be removing these app.java and put your actual source file and then work onto it. But from the Maven, it is all worried about what is the directory structure you're following. So now app.java is one of the dummy file which Maven has given us by creating a new sample project. In the same way, if you go to src test, there also you'll have a Java folder, and inside this you will have a app test.java. That means this is the file which is used to test the app.java file. Okay. Now, so this is the directory structure we have, and inside the main you just have only one folder called Java. What happened to the other? Since we have created a basic or a simple template, Maven has not created any other structure. Suppose if you have used any other number earlier, then based on that, Maven will create a project, and correspondingly you will be having different directories under the src main and src test. Okay, so remember that. So now what we have done is we have generated a sample project for us, and in that we have some sample files, so we can use this to practice our Maven workflow. Okay, so let us try to do some practice and see how the Maven lifecycle exactly works. Okay, so let's go to the folder first. So now we will go inside the Maven folder and the project. So you can see that you have two files, src and pom.xml. And now from this, I can run the Maven lifecycle. So here, what I will do is I have to invoke the Maven by passing a goal in the same directory as what pom.xml is there, so that when you run the Maven goal, Maven will try to read a file called pom.xml in the current working directory. Okay, so that is why when you are going to run Maven, we will go inside the project workspace, and then we will be doing any of the build step. Okay, so first let's go with the lifecycle phase one by one. So what is the very first step or phase in the Maven lifecycle? The first one is compile, right? So when you do a compile, what it will do? It will once again come from the beginning called generate sources and then stop it until compile, correct? So that is the very first step. And before that, we know it will generate the sources automatically. So if you press enter now, so the very first thing that it does is it generates the sources and the resources required. And then for that particular step to happen, that is the compile, now it will use a plugin where this is the GAV of that compilation step plugin. And using this, it would be doing the actual compilation of the files that we have under the src main Java. Okay, so now it clearly says that it is a change detected because we do not have any change so far. And then it also says that how many files that it has taken. Okay, because since we had only one file on our src main Java folder, what it has done is it would have created a app.class corresponding to this app.java. So that is why it is saying one source file has been modified. And where will be the output of this? So the output of this will be present inside your project, where it will create a new folder called target, and all the outputs that you get from the Maven lifecycle, pretty much it will be putting it inside here. Okay, so now here you can see that it has compiled the app.java, and if you go inside target, you can see a classes, and inside the classes folder you can see that it has compiled the app.class. Okay, so now once the compilation is done, that is whatever files that we have converted it into a class file. The next thing is we need to run the next step, that is test. So now if I run Maven test, what will happen? What will happen? Once again, when I say Maven test, as per the life cycle, we know Maven will come from the generating source, compile, and then do the test. Okay. So what you can see now, first it has done the compilation of all the Java files from src main. Okay. And then it would have copied that to the what folder? The target folder. And once that is done, the next thing that it has to do is it has to pretty much do the unit test. So for doing the unit test, now you need to use the files under src test. So that is what the Maven will try to compile the src test Java files, so that you can use that to try to verify the resources. Okay, so in that way, now after doing the compilation of the files under src main, what this will do is, that is after that it will be going inside the src test Java folder, and in that whatever files you have, you will be executing it and creating a .class file correspondingly. Okay, and once that is created, that is there is no problem in all the test related files, then it will go ahead to run the unit test and you will be getting the output of it. Okay, so how do I see the output of this? So once again, the output of this will be specifically inside the the target, and in that you can see a folder called test classes. And if you go inside it, you can see this app test.class. So whatever file we have corresponding to it, you will be having a class file in this. Okay, so and if you look now on this side, for every action that it has to perform, it is going to call a corresponding plugin. That is when, if you want to use the new plugin for compile or any step, you will have a GAV which we have to specify to the Maven, and because of that it will be taking it, or whatever is the default plugin that it knows, it will take that itself. Okay, so that is what it is going to do. But if you watch very closely here, it has not done anything on the compilation step of your source code. It says nothing to compile, all classes are up to date. That means for the app.java that we have in src main Java folder, the file has already been converted into a class, and inside your target folder, you can see that there is such a class file for the source app.java. That is why it is saying that there is nothing to compile. That means we have already completed. That is why Maven is smart enough to know that you don't have to repeat it again. Okay, so what will happen? First generating the source and then compile, and after the compile you will do the test, and once the test is done, the next thing what we have to do is the package, right? So on the same folder I'm going to type Maven package. So now when you type Maven package, what will happen? Maven will once again come from the beginning. So it will generate the source and resources, compile, test, and then create a package. So you can see now it didn't do anything for the compilation of the source code. Once again, for the same reason that we already have the class files, and the same thing is for the src test apptest.java, because we have already compiled these files also in the previous run, and you have the corresponding class file for that. And once it is done, you will use these class files that is present under the src test, and you will use it to run the unit test. Okay, and once the unit test is run, the final step that we do is package, where the default package that we are going to create in Maven is a jar file. Okay, and you can see that once again, to execute any step, it is going to use a default plugin, and that plugin for creating a jar is this one. Okay, and now where is the jar file created? It would have put the jar file under the target folder on your workspace. So all the output of the steps of whatever steps that you run will be on the target directory. So if you go to this and the demo, the target, you can see it has created a file which is of the type executable jar. Okay, so like this, for every project that you create, you will be creating a default type called jar only. But if needed, we can change it later in the pom.xml to specify what exactly is the deliverable for this project. And the naming convention of the deliverable will be the name of the project, that is you have given in the artifact ID. If you remember, when we were trying to create the default template, we gave certain options. So from that option, it will take the artifact ID hyphen the version number dot jar. Okay, this will be the format, that is artifact ID hyphen version dot jar. So this is how it will always create the default jar type with this name. Okay, fine. Now, once we have done these changes, the next thing what we have to see is, in case if I have my project dependent on other project. So if there is any other project which is dependent on this jar file, then this jar file has to be available in the local repository, right? Because all these plugins that it is using, from where is it using? So it is trying to use it from the local repository that the Maven would have created while we were creating or when we were running the things for the first time. So since in my machine, we already have the local repository and I have all the files, it is running directly. But on your machine, when you're trying to run the Maven any step for the first time, it will take a lot of time and it will try to download all the plugins that we need into your local repository for the first time. And for the next time, it will try to use it and run. Okay. So in that case, now, if I want this demo-1.0 snapshot jar file to be used by some other project, then I need to put it into the local repository. And to do that, we will use the step called Maven Install. So if I do a Maven install, what will happen? Once again, it will go from generating the sources and resources. After that, it will try to do the compile step and then test step. After test, creating the package, that is the jar file. And after that, you are going to copy this jar file. Sorry, not this. You're going to copy the jar file that we've created with an output of this. That is the demo-1.0 snapshot jar file into the local repository. So that is what it is going to do. Where install is nothing but copying the file from the jar folder to the exact folder where the local repository is there. So that now, if there is any other project which it wants to use this jar file, it will be available in the local repository. Okay, so you will be doing this install step only when you have a requirement to share your project file with another project. If not, you will always stop the build step until the package step. Okay. Deploy, let's not do it now. We will see it a little later after we understand the workflow completely. Now, anything that you ran here, now we saw it comes from the beginning. That is why we call it as a default lifecycle phases. Suppose if we want to call the clean phase, which is not the default lifecycle, now see what happens. So we have this target folder completely, right, with all the details. Now, if I run Maven clean, it will delete all the runtime files, which is nothing but pretty much it will delete the whole of the target folder itself, because the target folder was created as an output for each step that you did. So in order to delete all the output of these, it is going to delete the entire target folder under your workspace. So now you can see you do not have anything. So like this, whenever you want to clean the workspace, you use the Maven clean step. Okay. And now the next time when you want to build the package, you don't have to do everything one by one. Because I was just showing it for our understanding on how things will be working. So every time now, if I want to do the build, all I have to do is simply do a Maven package. If I'm interested in only creating the project output, that is the jar or var. So now it will go ahead from the beginning. It will generate the source and resources, and for that it will compile. And now you can see, since there is no class file output, it is trying to run the the first compile phase, and then it goes with the test phase. And as part of the test, first it compiles that test files and it goes ahead with doing a unit test. And after the unit test, it is going to create the same file with the name of the project hyphen the snapshot. Okay, getting it on what exactly the Maven lifecycle works, or what is the phases and how we'll be giving them.
Yes, Adam.
Yes, Adam.
Okay, so when you go to a project in an organization, this is what ideally you will be doing, where you will be calling these different phases depending on what is that you are trying to achieve, where these are the default lifecycle phases. Okay, but in addition to this, we can also have different goals. Okay, how do you work on that? That will let you know. But if not, when you say that I'm trying to build a project using Maven, you will be using any one of them, where internally it will be calling the steps from the beginning to the top, where if we are following the default life cycle. Okay, now, so to understand it a little deeper on how Maven works, so in the last session we understood, and pretty much we now saw that whenever you run a Maven command or a goal, so whatever the sources that it needs and the resources that it needs, it will generate a list, and based on the list of resources that you need, it will go to the local repository and it will try to check for that in that. And if it is not there, it will try to download from the remote repository on the internet and put into the local repository, and from there it will use it. So in our case, since I have already ran this some time back or for my previous classes, so it is not downloading, but in your case it will download. So to understand it now, where exactly is the local repository available in our machine is what we need to understand. So on whatever machine in which you are running Maven, the local repository will be available under the user's home directory. So every operating system will have a home directory for every user who is using that machine. Okay, so in that way, inside the user's home directory, there will be a folder called .m2, and in that there will be a folder called repository. And this is where you will be seeing, or this is what is going to act as your local repository. It is nothing to act. In fact, this is the local repository which the Maven will be using to store everything. Okay, and if you go inside this folder, you can see that you will be having a lot of folders in this structure, where you will be having folders in term of group ID, artifact ID, version, and the plugin, whatever that you want to use. So this is the format that you will be having. So how do I know what is the home directory of a user? If it is a Linux machine, as soon as you open a command prompt, you will always be going to the home directory. In the same way, in Windows also, if you open a command prompt, for that user, you will always go to the user's home directory, which will be under the CU users, the name of the person as whom you have logged in. So inside that, if you go to a .m2 folder, okay, you can see this, and inside this, you can see a repository, and further, you can see that you have lots of folders in it, right? And if you use any one of them, you can further go inside it and see what exactly is the content that you have. So let's say I'll use this. Inside that, you can see there is one folder called JUnit, which is nothing but your group ID of that project or that particular plugin that we need to use. And inside that, you will be seeing various folders with respect to version, which means now the same plugin or the same plugin which we are going to use for the project comes in different release. So whatever that we want, we can use. So if you go to any one of them, which is going to be the version folder, okay, and further inside it, if you can see, you will be having the actual plugin file. Okay, so this is how it will be storing all the folders, all the plugins inside your local repository. So you can see everything will be stored under this in this folder. So basically, this is the folder which is going to be your local repository in this machine where everything will be stored. And where is the remote repository? So to understand the remote repository, this is the path that Maven uses to download if you do not have any file available in the user's local repository. Okay, so if I go to the site, you can see it has the same structure of everything as your local repository. In fact, when you download it for the first time, Maven downloads it exactly from the remote repository in the same structure. Okay, and inside that, the version, that is group ID version, and inside the version, you can see that you have the specific jar file, which is a plugin. So like this, Maven will automatically download everything from this location only. Okay, so clear on where do we have our local repository and from where is the Maven going to download everything in case if a plugin is not available in our local repository, or even for the first time when you are trying to run any plugin, then it will download and then based on that it will run. Getting it?
Yes, Adam.
So now let's go back to this project. So this is the project that we had, right? So in this, as I said, we had a directory structure and we had a sample Java file which the Maven architect itself gave us for some demo purpose. So that we are using. In your production, the only difference what you will have is instead of these dummy files, you will have the actual files and you will be replacing it with the actual project file. And that is the only difference that you will be doing in your production or in the organization. And now what you need to understand is where you will be having all this project. So to be clear, when a user is trying to modify a file in an SEM like Git, so the repository that he's going to create, right? Now that will contain the same folder structure and the Pom Dot Xml inside it. So which means now when a user is using Git to do the modifications for his file, he will not be putting everything inside it. This is the directory structure that he will follow. So ideally now when a user is creating a project and it is going to be used to work on the Maven, or it is a Java based project using the Maven, you will be building it. Then first thing they will do is they will create this directory structure, and only inside this directory structure they will be doing the changes and storing the files. Okay, so it is mandatory that we have to follow the standard directory structure. Same way they will create this and put the files. So now your central repository will be having exactly this contents only. So now if anytime if a user wants to work, he will do a git clone where he will get a directory like this in which he will be having a src folder and a pom.xml. And now after he goes inside any of the folder, depending on what he's trying to modify, that is, if he's modifying the actual source for the project, he will create new Java file or modify existing Java file. In case if he wants to do some testing, and then he will go inside the test folder and modify the existing Java files or create new Java files here. So this is the structure that they will follow, and that is what it will be there inside your repository of that project. Okay, understand it? They won't be just having only the file, they will be having all the structure, because now it will be easy for them not only to do the coding, but as soon as they finish the coding, for testing they have to do the compilation, right? So now using Maven, if they just run this Maven command, immediately it will test all the files and give it to them. So that is how they won't be wasting their time in everything. And not only that, when we as a release management people, when we are trying to create the product, what we will do is we will also create a similar workspace based on a latest commit ID. So when we do a clone, we will also get the same directory structure, and inside it, whatever contents that you have until that point of time based on the latest commit ID, you will have everything. So now when we run a Maven package, we will also create the product or the jar file, and that is what we will be giving it to the QA. That is the output, that whatever that we get here as a jar file or a var file, we will be giving it to the QA for testing. Okay, so either when you are trying to create a product to give it to the QA or for the release, it is the same step, and even for the developer, he will be doing the same step. Okay, so that is why we will store the contents in the repository in the same directory structure. Okay, getting it?
Yes, Adam.
Okay, so finally, now the directory structure is okay, and the content of it is also okay because the developers will be creating. So what will be our task? So now when we create a repository for a user for a particular project, then what we will do is we will create this standard directory structure and then just give it to them, so that the first time when the developer does a git clone, starting from there, they will be adding the Java files as they need it. They will create multiple folders inside the SRC main and SRC test based on the type of project, and they will be working on it. So that will be one of the tasks that we will be doing. And it is also our responsibility sometimes to create a new pom.xml or to modify an existing pom.xml. Now, when I'm talking about modifying a pom.xml, we need to understand what exactly is a pom.xml. And before getting into it, what is that we did now? We didn't create a pom.xml. When we created a template of the Maven project, it gave us a pom.xml template which we used and ran the default lifecycle, right? So let's see what is the content of this. Now this is a simple XML file, and if you look, it doesn't even have more than 20 lines of code or more than 20 lines of content. But because of the default template and the pom.xml, Maven was able to run all the default behavior. So all you need in the pom.xml is, if you see, it will be having the GAV of our project. Okay, so what is this? This is nothing but the initial contents that we gave while we ran the archetype generate. So it was asking us to enter some values, right? That is the value that we have entered. So in every pom.xml, you will be having the GAV, which will be based on the values that we have given either in the beginning of the project, that if we had created it using archetype generate. Okay, or going forward we will see, suppose if you want to replicate this project into another project, it is quite simple, where you just edit these values and modify it, should be good. Okay, so now in this case, what exactly is a pom.xml? So a pom.xml or a pom represents the project object model. That is the meaning of pom, where this is the build configuration file that we should have for each project. Okay, so now what is this? So every project should have a configuration file called pom, and that will be a XML file. Okay, because that is what Maven uses to understand. So remember, every project should have minimum of one pom.xml, which will be acting as a configuration file, where any changes that we have to do or any details that we have to tell it to the Maven will be put inside it. So what exactly a pom.xml contains? So basically, it is going to give a complete description about your project. In that way, it will have the details of your GAV, that is the name and what is the version of the product that you're going to work and release. What is the type of the artifact that you're going to create. So that is jar or var. That is what it is going to do. And then it will tell the details of where is the source code on which Maven has to do the build, and if there is any dependencies, what and all are they. Like I said earlier, if you have a project B which is dependent on project A, how is it dependent? So that details we have to give it in the pom.xml. And then suppose if you are going to use any other additional plugin other than the default workflow, then those kind of behavioral changes should be specified in the pom.xml. So like this, all the details specific to that project is what the pom.xml will be having. So in that way, now a pom.xml will always be in the Angular way, which means now whatever content that you put in an XML simply will be like a Angular bracket, a string, and then within this the value of it, and then you close it using the same Angular bracket and a slash mark. So these individual whatever that values that you're seeing are called as elements or tag. So these are called as the elements of your XML file. So the first element of your XML file will be a project. Okay, so you should open a project, and this is nothing but the default one that is giving. Even if you don't give anything from here to here, just open the Angular bracket, give project, and close the Angular bracket. That will also work. But since we are creating a template, it is giving us a standard. Okay, so the project or the pom.xml will begin with a project tag or an element, and it will close always with the project tag. And whatever that you're going to give within this will be specific for the project. And in that, you're going to give the GAV, where the group ID represents the first value of what is the organization or the group for which we are working, the name of our project, the version that we are using, and the packaging element or tag represents the type of jar file or var file that you're going to create. That is the deliverable that you're going to create. So in fact, if you now see, when we said Maven package, it tried to create a jar file because of this, and the name for the jar file was taken by this, that is demo, that is the value of this hyphen, the version, the value of this, followed by the extension of this. Okay, So this is the values that we will be having. Since we created the pom.xml from the Maven archetype, it created all these values that we passed. If not, if we are creating it manually, then we have to create the elements and put the tag. Okay. And other than that, the name of the project is what you see here. And this one is a default value. You don't have to worry about this now. That we will see it later when we go through the dependencies and the workflow of the POM. So as of now, if you see, if you have a project tag and within that, if you give the GAV and the packaging type, it is simply enough for us to understand and tell to the Maven that this is the workflow that you have to do. So all it needs is the pom.xml with this content and the standard directory structure. So that is why we didn't tell to the Maven where is the file, what file did we modify, where should be the output, where is the test file located, where should be the output of the test file, what type of jar should I create or a var should I create, what and all files should I pick for that. Everything was taken automatically by Maven. That is what we call it as a build automation. If we had to do all those things, then it will take a lot of time for us to set up. Whereas if we had just followed only two things, that is the directory structure and creating a pom.xml with the required details, it is enough for us to build the project using the Maven lifecycle. Okay, getting the useful thing on how we can automate the build. Getting it?
Yes, I done.
Okay. So now for today, let me stop it here. And in the tomorrow session, we will go deeper and see how do we modify a POM, what and all values that we can give and change the default behavior of Maven and see how it works. Okay.